Our next guest has a unique career journey, to say the least. A former Australian Air Force officer turned diplomat turned master of photography, who's now claimed more than 100 awards.
Way too many skills, I say. He's known for going to extraordinary lengths, camping for days in sub-zero snow or hanging out of helicopters to get the perfect shot. And we're pleased to say landscape photographer Scott Lego joins us now. Scott,
Hi,
great
Scott.
to have you on today.
Thank you.
You are a man of many, many talents, some incredible photos. What led you to, a shift in gears, a pivot in your career and pick up a camera professionally?
Yeah, definitely a shift, absolutely. So look, after leaving the Air Force, I went across to the public service, and to be honest, I just had a crazy work-life balance. Too much work, not enough life, and I just one Sunday afternoon, I'd just flown back in. I was about to fly out again the next day, and I was like, my whole life is dominated by work, and there was this landscape photograph on the wall, and I was like, it would be awesome if you just travelled to Australia and took landscape photos for a living. That would be awesome. And but I didn't know anything about photography, didn't know anything about running a business, and went to the bookstore, bought some books on photography, bought some camera gear, started taking photos, and then people were like, "Hey, Scott, these photos are all right. You should think about selling them." And then it started as a little bit of a side hustle on the side. Turned into a kind of bigger online business, and then about 8 years ago, opened my first gallery. And so now, we sell my photos to people all over the world, and here in Australia, online and in store, from everything from wall art prints to coffee table books, jigsaw puzzles even. So awesome excuse to travel Australia, and that's kind of maintained the kind of core to it.
You must have a real skill in this, because unless you're fibbing to us, and some of your first photos were pretty dodgy, because I know if I picked up a camera, it'd be quite average. But obviously, the first time when you picked up a camera, a little bit of magic must have been sparked.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think, there's obviously must be some, genetic, talent there or something from that point of view. But I think probably from that military background, found that if I do this setting, it equals this.
The methodical kind of process
absolutely.
to it.
Yes.
Okay,
yeah.
interesting.
So, and then it just kind of went from there. But, there's definitely an element of, that kind of craft aspect to it, to having that. But then you've just got to get out there and, get out amongst the outdoors.
We're seeing a collection of some of your photography, some of shots of you in your working life as well. There's some absolutely gorgeous shots that you have taken. What's the most extreme lengths you've gone to get the perfect shot?
Nail the shot.
Yeah, so I mean, you mentioned, hanging out of a helicopter or camping out in the snow. So definitely it's the winter ones in those more kind of extreme conditions. Only this winter, I went out one of those days, where it's a wild weather warning. Like you see in the movies, some guy kind of, leaning into the wind, the snow and the ice, and knowing that the moment I pull out the camera, it's going to get covered in snow and ice. So you've kind of got to get, prepared for that. Make sure that you're actually staying warm and not doing
hand warmers
silly.
as
yeah,
well.
Absolutely.
Gloves
You can't take
everything.
your hands off, right? So or your gloves off. So it's just about trying to battle those conditions, and then getting a snow gum in these cases, in those conditions that they really survive in winter.
When there's a weather warning and like 9 News is saying stay inside, does Scott Lego go? I'm going outside.
Absolutely. I mean, you don't want nice blue sunny days, right? You want a shot with drama, a bit of mood and something that is a little bit special. So yeah, you've definitely kind of get out there in those conditions. Absolutely.
I think because Australia is our home, it's our backyard, sometimes we can sort of forget how beautiful our landscape is. Talk me through the inspiration that you draw from the Australian outback or those snowy fields around our country.
Well, I mean, it's such a diverse landscape, right? We've got amazing, outback deserts, tropical rainforests, snow-capped mountains, and amazing, beaches. And we ship overseas, and I'm amazed at the number of people that we ship to, but also that just are like, I didn't realise Australia had snow, or I think everyone's got this idea that it's Skippy the bush kangaroo in the outback. And so I love kind of challenging that notion and showing the diversity that Australia has of just the diverse landscape that we have as such an ancient landform too, and so the geology and the trees and everything that we have is just spectacular.
Yeah, so much more to Australia than kangaroos and crocodiles. So doing a great job of sharing that. A lot more people are getting into photography these days. I don't know if it's Instagram, social media. I don't know if you want to welcome more competitors, but do you have tips for any beginners out there?
Yeah, so look, I think, if you're starting out, everyone kind of gets caught up in what gear should I have or what have you, but the best camera is the one that you've got on you, So, and for a lot of people, that's the mobile device. So, use that before you kind of, spend too much money on crazy gear. And just get out there. I always say you can't capture an amazing sunrise while you're tucked up in bed. So, you've got to get out there and, just keep exploring. A lot of people turn up to the scenic lookout, get their little happy snap, and go from there. Whereas go and walk up that hill that's there and see what the view is from up there and explore a little more. So that's part of the journey for me, is just getting outdoors and experiencing nature.
Get amongst it, but perhaps not from hanging out the side of a helicopter.
I was going to say, no, do that. That's tip number 5, hang out of a helicopter.
Yeah.
To see more of Scott's work, you can visit scottlego.com. Really beautiful pictures, and thank you so much for sharing.
Thanks for having me.
This morning.
Thank you.
It's stunning.